Hello? Yes.
That's all.
Are we ready, folks? We have 6:30.
You're supposed to be 56 pages.
How about Facebook?
So hold on, I'll be back with you.
It is.
Okay, I'd like to call the Baldwin City Council work session for January 7th, 2025 to order. The first item on our agenda this evening is a public hearing for our Aguilar zoning change. Mr. Samuels, do you want to, one of the Mr. Samuels, would you like to open the public hearing, please?
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So, as the mayor said, first order of business is the Aguilar zoning change ordinance. That's number 2024-12156Z. At this point, we can now go ahead and open a public hearing on that matter. Anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed zoning change is invited to go ahead and do so now.
It will be open for 20 minutes?
Correct. And if there's no one that wants to speak right now, we can hold that open and also ask if there's anybody who would like to speak in opposition. And go ahead and hold that open for 20 minutes as well. Not seeing anybody looking to speak, we can go ahead and hold those open for the remainder of the meeting, and then I can come back later and close the hearing if there's not anybody else who wants to speak. Thank you.
And has become my custom for the folks who are on Facebook, I just want to let you know who is in the room. We have full council this evening. God, this feels great to have everybody here. We have our Chief Administrative Officer, we have legal counsel, we have our city engineer, the press is here, and we have a small group in the gallery, so thank you for being here tonight. There being no old business, the first item of new business is the Habersham County Jail Agreement. Ms. Woodmaster.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's the first time I've seen some of you since the year turned over. All right, so we have tonight before you the Habersham County Jail Agreement. For those of you who have been here for at least 3 years, we have signed this before. We, once upon a time in Habersham County, would pay a per diem per inmate per night to house an inmate at the Habersham County Jail. That changed, I believe it was 2012, 2013, maybe 2014. In that time period, that switched over, and there is a law that allows for the municipalities and the county having an intergovernmental agreement in place to assess a maximum of a 10% per ticket charge for the purpose of renovating the jail, administrative fees, all of those things that come with running a jail inside the county. So in I believe it was 2012 or 2014, we initially started this agreement with Habersham County to house our inmates. Obviously, City of Baldwin does not have a jail, and they have to be housed somewhere. And so this agreement, instead of there being a per diem per inmate, it now is just 10% of the citation collection. So whatever ticket has been paid, 10% of that, of all of our ticket revenue that comes in through a court, is going to the jail fund at Habersham County. We did talk a little bit about this last year, and just for historical context, I had them run numbers. I requested for Habersham County to run numbers on how many inmates the City of Baldwin Police Department had housed there, along with anyone who was arrested in Baldwin that was housed there. And over 39 months, we had over 970 stays, per night stays. So the equivalent of that, how much we paid versus how many nights we had, it was about $68 a night. Before that, in 2014, we were paying $38 a night. The equivalent rate today is about $52 a night. But I would add that if we decided not to go with the current agreement that we have, we would be paying for this out of the city's coffer, not added to that, to the ticket. So with this method, with 10% going to Habersham County, it is being absorbed by, or the cost of it is being absorbed by the offender that is paying that citation.
As it should be.
So.
Expensive PB&J spend.
And with the turnover of the sheriff, they specifically set the agreement, this last agreement that we had, to end with Sheriff Terrell's term, so that the new agreement would have Sheriff Crockham's term contemplated. So this agreement is good through 2023.
I thought we were limited to 1 year terms, Mr. Chairman.
Not for intergovernmental.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know why I thought that we were, at some point during the last 7 years that I've been here anyway, that we were paying a per diem, and then it changed to this. I don't know why.
There was a discussion, I remember it being a pretty serious discussion at one point.
Yeah.
So my first year, in 2018, we were signing the second version of this agreement. The first agreement was signed by our chief of police. So it didn't come before council within the discussion.
Yeah.
So in 2018, it came before council for approval. And that was the first discussion we had. Then it was good for 3 years, it sunset, and we had to re-up.
Oh, okay, that must be.
Yep, so we
That's
did
right.
sign this agreement twice in your term. This will be the third time we signed it.
It's good that it's not coming out of coffers, the citizens.
Right, definitely a good thing that the offender's paying for their own lodging.
Any other questions for Ms. Woodmaster? Are we okay with Ms. Bowker? The next item under new business is Burma, Georgia First Responder PTSD Program Resolution number 2025-01158R. Ms. Woodmaster?
All right, this is one of two House bills that we'll be discussing tonight. This House bill was 451, also known as the Ashley Wilson Act. This is a requirement for every municipality to adopt this first responder PTSD program premium insurance. What this does is it provides a one-time lump sum benefit to a first responder who's experienced PTSD during their term. The PTSD inducing event has to have taken place between 2024 and the present day, so they can't go back to a previous event that happened in 2018 and count that for the lump sum. But if it happened in 2024 from the adoption of the House bill, that does apply. This is a mandate. We are required to have this insurance for our first responders. We had to submit all of our first responders information so they knew how many we had on staff, if we had any second tier firefighters. So if they're part-time with us but full-time at another agency, there is a method for them to split the cost between the departments for this fee, this annual fee. It is split the same way that our fire, the cancer benefit is broken down, so we pay it semi-annually, and every 6 months we'll send them a new census of who's on staff, how many people we have, to determine what that rate will be. There is a minimum requirement for the lump sum and the long-term PTSD disability, which covers 60% of their income for a certain number of months. I believe it is 6 months, it might be 12. But those two pieces, on page 26 of your packet, you'll see component 1 and component 2. We have to adopt both of these in order to meet the requirement of House Bill 451. There are some agencies that already have something similar that qualify, so they may only have to adopt component 1 or component 2. The City of Baldwin has neither, so we will have to adopt both of these. The minimums are listed on there. So for the first responder lifetime benefit, it's a $3,000 lump sum payment that goes to that employee. We have the option, if you turn over onto the back side of that, we have the option to increase this amount. So it's completely up to the city council how much you want that lump sum benefit to be for our employee. but you can go up to $15,000 as a lump sum benefit. There is a higher premium cost. It is about a $2,000 difference annually. So it's not a significant increase. I'm sorry?
Sorry, this is per responder.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, so again, unfunded mandate from the state. I personally believe that the first responders are underserved when it comes to PTSD treatment and underdiagnosed. I'm definitely a proponent for increasing it, but with unfunded mandates, that's something that we'd have to work and research with our budget process for the next year.
Yes, we can, so we knew that this bill was coming. We've built this in, an anticipated amount into this current budget cycle. No matter which option you choose, my recommendation obviously would be the 15,000.
Yes.
But the decision is up to the city council. Your budget can handle any of these numbers.
So you guys have already, thank you. I love it. They stay on top of it. Yeah. What does we do without them?
Figure it out.
Awesome. Yeah.
I'm already here.
That city charter,
Yeah,
I'll get you every time.
Because the charter said.
So with this requirement, GERMA, which is our insuring program through GMA, had to create another fund, which is Fund C. You'll see that in the language in here. We have to agree by resolution that we are going to enter into this Fund C where these dollars will go. So the decision before City Council is one, the amount, what you want the lump sum to be, so we know what the total premium amount is, and then the authorization of the resolution for us to enter into the Fund C.
So, Councilwoman Lehman had a question.
I was just, in the budget, is that in the, employee insurance
Yes.
category?
Yes.
And I missed it, did you budget the full premium?
Yes.
Or is it $15,000?
They gave us anticipated numbers at the start of this. They didn't know what the final numbers were gonna be until they had the census and the agreement from MetLife, which is who the program is run through. So we had, I think our budget was $8,700 for the year, is what we built into the budget, because we didn't know how much we were gonna have to put in there. But $8,700 is in there for this calendar year, for this fiscal year, and we're only gonna pay half of that this fiscal year.
Because we're already halfway through this.
That's
So
right.
how many are we paying for? How many?
And I don't have that exact number, but it
Okay.
is our entire staff,
Okay,
for both the police department and fire department.
okay.
That $7,180 covers every, or is that per?
That is everyone.
That's everything.
That's the entire census.
Okay.
So it's not per-
No.
I was wondering, I was thinking to myself.
Not a lot.
Yeah, okay, so that's
Yeah.
for everyone.
Yes.
Okay.
That makes more sense now,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so you said 87, okay.
That is,
Good.
that is really not a whole lot to discuss there.
No, not here.
Are we okay bringing this forward to Monday? You'll have an opportunity to read the document in your packet?
Yep.
Yes? Okay, we'll bring that forward for Monday. Thank you, Emily, that was great. The next item under new business is fire department training facility agreements, also.
There are currently 4 of these agreements. They're all the same. There is one for Banks County and Habersham County, as well as the city of Demarest and I believe Clarksville. We have a training facility right outside, over here in the pit of this complex, that our fire department has been using for over a decade now. And every year, there has been 1 or 2 municipalities or agencies that have requested to use the facility. So over the last 3 years, we've built this intergovernmental agreement, the fee that is associated with the training facility, and everyone in the county uses our facility. So we just don't have those agreements yet, but everyone at some point or another has used the city of Baldwin's training facility for fire training. So in the agreement, it is just explaining that they're entering into an agreement to use the facility for this year, and then to pay that annual fee. That fee is set for the year. They don't have to pay that each time. they're using the facility. It is only this time. And I don't think it's listed in here, but it is understood from all of the agencies that when they're using the LP propane tank, they're in charge of paying for the propane they're using. So the city isn't providing that. That is an additional fee that they have to include when they use the facility.
Should that be in here? Or-
I don't think so. We can add it in there. This is something that they've done on their own. They've offered twice now to refill it,
Yeah.
refill the LP tank.
Yeah.
And so that is just the common practice that they follow.
We've, over the years, have really turned that training facility into something. I mean, we've got the liquid, help me out, Emily.
The flammable liquid tank.
Flammable liquid, right, right,
Yeah.
so, and then we've got the
The
mangled
vehicle,
vehicle that they, yes. And watching them use this facility, I think it was 5 years ago, about this time, 5 years ago, that I went and spent the shift with the fire department. And all of the things that we've improved just in that 5 years has been amazing. And if I could, Mayor and I were speaking earlier today in anticipation of this and our meeting. And especially with this fire consolidation, the feasibility study that's going on, guys, I would love for council, this was actually Eric's idea 5 years ago, or maybe 6 years ago, whatever it was, for me to go and spend a shift with each one of our departments. And I think that was probably one of the best things that I've done in my 7-year term, is to be able to go in and understand those departments, the people that are running it, what their actual needs are, because we're just up here like rubber stamping things. And I think that it would also set a really good example for the other elected officials in our county, for the other cities and for the county, because we're up here sometimes like a bunch of buffoons making these really important decisions that not only are impacting the residents, but impacting the lives of the people that are serving the citizens. Especially in, also with our water and wastewater plants, that's in the background. Something that most people just do not, we flush the toilet, we turn on the tap, and we never think about where that comes from. Whereas sometimes we think about our first responders and public safety. But I think I would really like to encourage, I know it's not easy to go and spend an entire 24-hour shift, and I'm not saying that we have to, but I would love for us as a government body, and Bubba, I guess you could tell us if it's okay for us, because I know it would be a quorum, obviously we're not gonna be making decisions and things like that, but as a government body going to, the fire department, they had me mopping floors and cleaning turnout gear, but we also ran the tower. Putting on turnout gear and putting that mask on your face in the air that blows, it puts you in their shoes, literally. And to run around with 60 pounds of gear up and down those stairs and dragging a hose and dragging a mannequin is so impactful. And I think that especially right now with that feasibility study that's going on and the whole ISO discussion is more important than ever, because we as a city government basically are going up against the county and saying, hey, there's a reason why our residents are paying for proximal substantial services over and above what the county provides. And this is what. So, yeah.
So you're encouraging everybody to
Yeah,
think about
let's do
doing a
it.
shift with
Let's do it.
our, now, as we talked about earlier today, one of the things, when you and I came on council, things were a little bit different. And in the conversation, I gave kudos to Ms. Woodmaster for changing some of the things that you and I did, or adding to things that we didn't have when I first came in. Doing the world
The
tour.
world tour?
Right, so we can see from intake to wastewater treatment. That we do that. I don't know that we actually need to spend a shift there, because where Yeah, I've done the world tour 3 times, and I'd love to do it again. I mean, every time I go, I see something different. And I did do a ride along with one of our former police chiefs when I
Yes,
first,
that's
when I
right.
first came on.
Yeah.
It is unbelievably enlightening. But I do appreciate the way that we handle retreat.
Yeah.
And that our department heads are with us, telling us what their needs are, what their successes have been. So we do get firsthand information from the department heads. I mean, I'm retired, you know, so it's a little bit easier for me to do some of these things. You have a schedule that you can't.
I'm a dirt farmer, it's easy for me.
But there are folks, you know, who work full-time jobs and a little bit difficult. So I do appreciate that we can get that firsthand information from our department heads at our twice annual retreat. So we're not twisting your arm to do this, but know that, you know, the department heads are there for you if you would like that kind of hands-on. Also worry about liability with all of us, you know, in the tower.
So I was gonna say, it would be more impactful for each of us as an individual to do this. Because
Rather than as a group,
you
yeah.
lose a lot of, attention
Yes.
to detail if it's a big group, so.
You may be right, because I will say that the one, when I did it with the fire department, it was actually a training day that they were doing once a month when they had volunteers. And there were other departments, other agencies that were coming and training there, so we're learning all the things. I will say at our Christmas party, some of our water departments, people were like, well, we really want you, we feel neglected, because COVID happened, so I didn't get to go and spend time with them. But they said, you know, it's kind of boring just, you know, when the weather's fine, but when the rain hits is when it really gets, it's a hairy canary. And, you know, it's they're there all night long and monitoring the things.
I think
and-
Fletcher should call us and.
But they were supposed to, help me when the rain.
They're in the trenches.
Okay.
You gotta know to go.
Erin, there was a little piece right when I spoke, and she said, "You may be right, can you cut that out?"
No.
Okay, we could
You got
get
it.
sidetracked
Okay.
from this. I thank you for
You're
reminding us that that's a good idea to do. And if you can't do it, don't feel bad, because we do have access to our department heads, and I appreciate Ms. Woodmaster building that into. Any other questions on the IGAs for fire?
Really glad we could do it.
Is this the final? It says draft, is this the final?
Yes, it's just in draft mode until it's approved by the city council.
So, I have 2 questions.
Sure.
First of all, does it affect our insurance premiums to have these other communities coming in?
It does not.
Okay. And then, it looks like there might be one typo.
Yeah.
Under the, second paragraph, last sentence waiver, WAVER, might have just changed that, because that is a word, but it should be WAVER, I think.
We're missing an I. We will fix
That's in each of the agreements.
it. Yeah, it's a copy and paste.
Okay. Are we okay bringing this to Monday night for a vote?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, the next item on our agenda, everybody's beloved House Bill 581, saved by floating home exemption.
Y'all ready?
Here we go, preaching to people.
Here we go.
I will try my best to truncate all of this.
Yeah.
But please ask questions if I say something that you don't fully understand. We have, from the outset, we have until March 1st to decide to either do this or not. The law could change in another legislative session, but right now if you don't, you're out. Or at least that's the understanding I have, correct me if I'm wrong. So we do need to make a decision if the city of Baldwin is going to opt in to this floating homestead or opt out. If we choose to opt out, we have to host 3 public hearings, similarly to increasing our property tax millage rate. So there has to be 3 scheduled hearings. We have to have time to advertise those hearings to intend to opt out of that exemption option from the state. And we have until March 1st, so that only gives us February, like our February calendar. So the work session and our two city council meetings, and then also our end of month meeting for January. So that's point number one. We have until March 1st to do this. There is two main components of House Bill 581 that are impacting these decisions right now, and that is the floating homestead exemption that they're creating for the state, and then this FLOST, a local option sales tax that is tied to a floating exemption in the county and its cities. So it's two-pronged, and the intention is to offset this homestead exemption by a local option sales tax. This is a challenge because there's 7 cities in Habersham County, and there's 6 cities in Banks County. And if one of those cities chooses to opt out while everyone else is opting in, you do not have the benefit to go after the local option sales tax, and you now have a floating homestead exemption that you've implemented that's permanent. But the opposite is also true. So if we all opt out and one opts in, we're the only ones who have a homestead exemption that is floating. The county, Habersham County, does have a homestead exemption that is frozen. I don't know enough about their exemption to know if it meets the qualification, or if they have to opt into this too. I will say that we had a meeting last week with the county and representatives from all 7 cities in Habersham to find out where the collective heads were at on opting in. It is the consensus of every city that we all want the FLOST option, which would require that everyone opt in. So in order to do that, we all have to choose to opt in and not have anyone opt out, which is why I reached out to all of you last week to see if there was an option for a joint called meeting with Habersham County and the 7 municipalities to discuss this publicly and put everyone's cards on the table so we know where we're at and where we need to go forward. So that's what's at stake right now. The details of the floating homestead exemption essentially is by adopting this floating homestead exemption, it applies to every homesteaded property. So if you currently have a homestead exemption on your property or you apply for one by April 1st, you are then eligible for that floating homestead exemption for this next tax year, for tax year 2025. That floating homestead exemption, to keep it as short and as simple as possible, whatever the assessment value or the fair market value is for that year, for this current year, whatever it is, if you go read your tax bill, whatever that fair market value is, if it goes up by any amount from this year to next year, this floating homestead exemption will take that difference and only increase it based on an inflationary method of the state's choosing. We all think it will be the consumer price index. It makes the most sense, but there isn't a guarantee that that's even the answer. But it will be set. They'll say it's either gonna go up 1%, 2%, whatever the CPI said, it's going up 3%. So whatever the fair market value is, it's gonna go up by that percentage regardless of that assessment that is being applied. That's your exemption. So this is not a replacement exemption. So if you have a homestead exemption in Baldwin, the standard exemption is $5,000. That does not go away. You have that $5,000 exemption, and then you will also have this floating exemption, whatever that value difference is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the floating homestead exemption. It only applies to homesteaded properties and those that have applied for a homestead exemption. So if you do not have a homestead exemption, apply for a homestead exemption. You should have it anyway. Apply for it.
100%. Yeah.
But you are in this program if that happens. So any questions about the floating homestead exemption? Okay.
So the idea
Yes.
of that is to control
Assessment values.
assessment values.
That's
So
correct.
I've used my property as an example before, that my fair market value has gone crazy. So what that would do, for as long as I own the house, it would
my assessed, my fair, it would count my fair market value for the assessed?
No, so whatever your fair market value is the fair market value.
Okay.
Then whatever that difference is from the year prior to the current year, if it's above that inflationary increase, whatever measure is used for the inflationary increase, that difference is disregarded. And it just goes up on the, whatever that inflationary percentage will be. That does not mean if you've changed something to your property and increase its value, that it's gonna stay at that original fair market value. So if you add a room and a bathroom to your home, it will most likely increase your fair market value, but that's because there was a change to the property, not an assessment change.
And if the property is sold,
Correct, it
then
starts
all
over.
bets are off, we start again at the current fair market value.
Right. Also, one of the points of this House bill, it codifies that reassessments have to happen at least every 3 years. It's been the general rule, most counties do that, but it'll be in the law that it's required to be reevaluated at least every 3 years.
Banks counties own it every 3 years.
In sections,
Yeah,
like
they do,
clockwork.
Yeah, yeah,
They
a little
do it.
picture on key public changes.
Mhm.
It looks better now. Yeah.
So that's the exemption side. The flossed side, again, is a local option sales tax. This law kind of opens up how many lost pennies you're allowed to have. Right now, well, until this law was adopted, there was a 2 penny cap for a county. There were some exceptions already to that rule, like a T-SPLOST was an exemption, and I believe an education SPLOST was also an exemption to the 2 penny rule. So for anyone who's buying anything in Habersham County, you look at the tax percentage and it's 7. And that's because 4 pennies belong to the state and then 3 belong to our local government.
One of which goes in school, or 2.
Our lost penny goes to the Board of Education. But then we also have a SPLOST, an education SPLOST, and I think that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
So this FLOST, this local option sales tax, is an exemption. So it would increase the Habersham County tax rate to 8%, but we're allowed to have the penny based on this law.
Yeah.
In order to get the lost penny, this does have to go to a referendum in November.
Mm.
So us saying yes and opting into this homestead exemption now does not guarantee that we will have FLOST come November. The voters decide that. In addition to the voters deciding that, it does have to go to the legislature to be renewed. So this is many steps in order to achieve the FLOST penny. And just like every other SPLOST, we can't campaign for it, we can't advertise for it, we can't pay a company to advertise for it. We can only educate on what SPLOST does, what it can do, what LOST does and cannot do. So with the FLOST penny, if we all get it, it is distributed between the county and the cities based on an intergovernmental agreement, just like we do for LOST in Banks County. It is good for up to 5 years. That's set in your intergovernmental agreement with the county and its cities. It can be based on any measure though. Typically, SPLOSTs are divvied up in Habersham based on population. Doesn't mean that that's a guarantee for FLOST this time, but it is a discussion that has to be had amongst the cities and the county.
Have we scheduled that? Has that been agreed to?
There are many things that have to happen. The first thing, based on the meeting that we had last week with the city's leadership, is that we would like to have the joint called meeting for everyone to openly talk about House Bill 581 and to understand where everyone's head's at. If there's questions or concerns that an entity or jurisdiction has, that we can all talk about those together. That meeting has not been scheduled. We are waiting on 2 of the 8 to reply. Everyone was going back to their boards, and our plan was to meet tomorrow, or to have a final answer tomorrow to decide if everyone was in agreement to have a joint meeting to talk about this Because it really, yeah, it really is a group effort. It's a group effort,
Yeah.
threefold, but mainly twofold. That one, we either all need to be in or just go ahead and be out.
Yeah.
And if we're all in, we are going to have to talk to each other about the intergovernmental agreement. So I think it's a win across the board for all of us to meet together. We are going to try and do the same thing with Banks County. We've not met as the cities yet, so we're hoping to get that scheduled this next week. But again, this joint meeting has to happen in January because we have to decide if we're in or out. If we're out, we have to schedule
Yeah.
our public
And
hearing.
we're
So it will be
already the
forthcoming.
first weekend now, of January.
Well, I can tell you, being a Banks County resident, this is, won't have as much of an impact on me, on our property, as it would on Habersham side.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure, just my personal reading of the bill, that it would really benefit the Habersham County side of the city.
I would argue that it equally benefits both sides. I
Oh, no,
think
it will
that,
benefit us too, but more so.
Because we have lost in Banks
Yeah.
County already, and, well, we got it, but it goes to the schools,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
this floss penny is required to offset property taxes, just like lost. So even though it is a local option sales tax, it is restricted, or they're using the same bucket as SPLOST, but
Yeah.
it is restricted. You have to take that number, whatever you collect, and offset property taxes with that dollar amount. We have the benefit of already doing that in Banks County, so we're familiar with what that
Yeah.
process looks like. Some other cities don't have that though, and so this is brand new for all of them.
Is there a cap on the amount of SPOS dollars? Like right now, Banks is at, 8%, 4% to the county. Is there like a limit, or can it be 9, 10, 12, it can be any amount?
I believe that it's 9%, and it's only 9% in some cases. Is that right? That like, there's some very specific sales taxes, like there's a most
Right.
and a host.
There's a most.
Yes. They won't help us, but they have been adopted, and so there is that 9% that exists.
So if I understand correctly, worst case scenario is we could opt in, and so the property values are held, which is great on the surface for the citizens and property owners. But if they don't approve the FLOST, then the money has to come from somewhere else to keep things running. So the millage rate would have to be increased, or it would have to come from.
Or you reduce services.
Another, or reductions. Okay, so that's worst case scenario.
That's correct.
So in other words, if it doesn't get approved, then it's gone for forever. If it's approved and we all go forward with it, isn't there somehow like 5 years later?
Yeah, so the IGA will determine how long that FLOST is available. The homestead exemption is permanent.
Yeah.
Until and when a legislature comes along and decides that they're gonna sunset that rule,
Yeah.
but it's not built to sunset. So
Okay.
that's a permanent exemption
Okay.
that's on the book. FLOST is what you can decide, this didn't work, we're all not in agreement anymore, we don't want this to happen again, and you don't go after FLOST.
Okay.
But you decide how many years it's set for. It doesn't have to be 5, you can do it for 3. But that's an agreement that all of the cities in the county will make together in the IGA.
It'll be good for all of the cities to get together.
Yes.
And we gotta be able to explain it to
But we
our people.
can't opt in year 2 if we've opted
No,
out
right.
now.
Right,
So
now
if we're
there,
out, we're out.
yeah, and we talked about this a little bit last week, in my office with, I think, at some point or another.
Oh, there we
Yeah.
go.
But there is a world, a time where we could opt out of this thing and say that we're not gonna do this homestead exemption, and have all of the cities somehow collectively agree that they're all going to petition the dome and ask them to give us a floating homestead exemption. Once we all have a floating homestead exemption on our books, then we could go after FLOSS together. But every single entity, all of the cities and the county have to have a floating homestead exemption that meets the criteria to go after FLOSS. So there's a way to get there. It would be very difficult to have all 7 cities adopt a version of a floating homestead exemption when we could just all agree to do it now and let that process start. I would add that for Habersham County, it is gonna, well, for both counties, it's going to add to the workload of the tax assessor because they now have to maintain 2 sets of books for these exemptions. And so there is added work to the county tax assessor. I would also add that both Habersham County leadership and Banks County leadership said that they intend to opt in. So that's not a concern. So they understand what's gonna happen if they're still choosing to opt in.
Interesting times for sure.
It is.
Got a little constitution.
It is, yeah, it's a lot to digest. We've been mulling over this thing for a while. And we have heard from one of our representatives that they may tweak this law. And that but they could tweak any law. They can change whatever they want to. They are the government, after all.
I spoke to Victor about it, Representative Anderson, and he said, look, opt in. He said, legislature's gonna be looking at it this year and next year, making adjustments as they need to. He said, but if you opt out, then you can't come in.
No,
So he said, and frankly, the citizens voted for it. The citizens wanted this, at the ballot.
I think it was 65 voted against it, or no, 6,500. Well, there were 23.
65.
There was out of-
voted for it, I think.
Yeah. Out of
Yes.
23,000 voters, 14,000 said they wanted this.
Yes, yeah.
So, I mean, the voters said do it.
They probably didn't understand
Right.
the floss aspect of it, but
And I think that's why it's important that we explain it as much as anybody will listen.
And at the end of the day, if FLOST isn't a viable option for the taxpayers, the reality is based on the floating homestead exemption, it has to be overcome somehow. So it will either be an increase in the millage rate or a decrease in services, which again is their call. And we open up the floor every April
Yes.
/ beginning of May
Yes.
for them to tell us if they want us to cut it. So it is, the power is in the people. It's their vote, they decide what happens.
Okay. We'll bring this one. Do you want us to vote on this on Monday? Is that?
I don't think you need to vote on it. It would be nice to have consensus. But the intention of that joint called meeting is to gain consensus amongst the boards of Habersham County. So a final decision would happen there. Not really even a final decision.
All right,
just
so
an
this
agreement.
won't appear on Monday's agenda?
Unless you want to talk about it, no.
No, okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions. If you read through this and it confuses you. Yeah.
Going back a little bit.
Okay.
On the,
Can you pull the mic closer to you, Larry, please?
I'm sorry, I guess it was the jail agreement.
Jail. Okay.
I was curious about where, so it says in here about emergency medical care and they can't pay for it and all the rest of
Yep.
it. Where's that money coming from?
The
Us.
coffer, the general
Yeah,
fund.
we would pay the bill of their stay.
How often does that happen?
Every now and again.
Not often, but it has happened.
But that's standard. But if you are, if
Yeah.
the state has you in its custody
You're
and something
responsible.
happens to you, the state got to pay for it.
Yeah, so all this agreement is saying is that while they're housing them for us, we're
Yeah.
still responsible for them to make sure that they're okay, cover the bills.
Thank you, I was just curious.
Is that right there, my first year? Looking at this
Yeah. I think we've had one since you were on
We have to
here.
pay for that?
I think so.
There's been 3.
3, it is within 3. Oh, yeah.
Another multiple.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, Mr. Samuels.
At this time, we can go ahead and close the public hearing for the Aguilar zoning change.
Good, seeing no one moving forward. Thank you, 45 minutes, long enough. All right, that's the end of new business announcements. Due to unforeseen delays, the 2024 property tax information was released later than typically expected, and the bills have now been sent via postal mail. As it is the city's practice to extend the due date in the event of billing delays, the new due date for 2024 property taxes is February 28th, 2025. For any questions, please call City Hall or email cityclerk@cityofbaldwin.org. There's an announcement that I have that is not on here. At the end of last year, somebody came forward to talk about the noise ordinance, and I had said that I'd put a committee together to look at our noise ordinance. And so if there are any citizens who would like to be a part of that, looking at the noise ordinance, I know some folks have had issues with plays and parties and neighbors and things. So if anybody is interested in being a part of the noise ordinance group, please contact me via City Hall as well. And if there's any council members who want to be a part of that group, I'd appreciate the help. And the noise ordinance is on our website, so you can find it there and look at it. In 2020 was the last time I think we looked at it. 2019, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that
been
sounds about
around
right.
6 years. So it's about time. City offices will be closed Monday, January 20th in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Are there any announcements from council? Hearing none, any announcements from staff? Can I have a motion to adjourn? I have a motion from Councilman Benter. Do I have a second? I have dueling seconds.
Photo finish.
I'll take it from Councilwoman Davis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.
Where one day, I'm gonna do it.